Welcome to Glasgow Rangers Nation with me, your host, Owen James. Guys, could this be the beginning of the revolution? Could this be the beginning of a major change in Rangers? So last night, news pretty much out of the blue that Trabzonspor had submitted a bid for our captain, James Tavernier. I think a lot of us were expecting that now the Saudi window is open, that the bids would come in thick and fast from Saudi Arabia, from El Ettifaq, Stephen Gerrard, and possibly even from the club that now has James Bisgrove as its CEO. That appeared to be the rumours. Now, there had, of course, been that Besiktas earlier in the window. That may have just been lazy journalism, given the fact that Giovanni van Bronckhorst had become the head coach of Besiktas. Now, we're going to talk a little bit about Tav. We're going to talk a little bit about this transfer window, and we're going to talk a little bit about Todd Cantwell as well, and Connor Goldson. Three names that do appear to be cropping up time and time again. Now, I know Scott Wright is a name that many people really do want to see depart the club, but the issue, of course, is that other than the link to Sheffield Wednesday, which now appears to have died a death, there really does seem to be very little interest in the Scots winger. So let's start by talking about our captain, James Tavernier. Look, I'm going to start with just a general thing. Look, there is no doubting that in his time at Rangers, James Tavernier has been a great servant to the club. His numbers are phenomenal. I think it's 125 goals, 127 assists, which from right back is absolutely outstanding. The fact that he is the highest goal-scoring defender in British history, British footballing history as well, is a feather in his cap and all very well and good. He does, I think, get a lot of unfair criticism at times and the blame for a lot of things around the club because, of course, as the figurehead, as the captain, like the manager, you carry a lot of the can for things. That is, kind of the responsibility of taking on a leadership position at any football club, whether it be Rangers, whether it be Manchester United, Manchester City, Arsenal, wherever it is in the British Isles. If you take on a leadership role, you are seen as being part of the issue if your club is not successful. That's just how things are. But, the one thing we've got to all kind of realize, I think, and I've read a lot of different, since this story broke, and we'll talk a little bit more about specifics of the story and what I found out as regards contract details, as regards transfer fee details shortly. So hang on for that. It is upcoming. I think what we've all got to kind of realize, I think, is that, as players get older, as they pass 30 years of age, they start to slow down. They are not the same player they were, in their 20s. Being a footballer these days is a relatively short career. Your peak comes between the ages about 24 and 28. As soon as you hit 29, 30, you start to plateau. 31, 32, it's a downturn from there. And very few players, reach and carry on playing. Outfield players, carry on playing much to the ages of 35, 36, 37 as they used to be able to. I mean, certainly we saw in the European Championships, didn't we? Just 39-year-old Cristiano Ronaldo, who was completely ineffective and looked one of the worst players in the tournament. So, I think Tav has kind of reached that purpose now where it is time for him to move on. It is time for him to go. There's a couple of things you need to look at this. And I know people talk about his goals and his assists, but, defensively, he has become a bit of a liability in terms of the fact the right side of the defense is targeted on a repeated basis by opposition teams. That's just the way things are. And, like I said, whilst his goals have been a very important part of this team, you can't go on solely relying on a right back to dig you out of a hole. I think that is the intention with how Philippe Clement is building this squad, to try and get goals from other areas of the park so that we're not depending on one person to dig us out of the shit when we get ourselves into it. And that is good for the future of the club. As well, I think you become stale after a while if you stayed somewhere for too long. And Tav has been here 9 years now. So, it's time for him to move on. It's time for both parties to move on. Like a relationship that's dead and buried, like a relationship that doesn't have the spark anymore. It's time for that relationship to come on and come to an end and the two parties to move on to pastures new. And I think, Trabzonspor is, a place where James Tavernier, I think, would be perhaps more suited than going to Saudi Arabia. It's still kind of in Europe. Turkey is in Europe, rather bizarrely. And also the fact that he would be joining up with two former teammates in Borna Barisic and John Lundstrom, both of whom have already joined Trabzonspor this summer. It really does seem like Trabzonspor are seeking to become the Turkish version of Rangers. Rangers East, maybe. I don't know. Perhaps that's the new name for them. Certainly it'd be an interesting combination at fullback if they've got Barisic one side and Tavernier the other. Now, what do we know? What are the facts of this matter? Now, people talk about transfer speculation. They talk about transfer rumor. They talk about transfer report. They talk about transfer silly season. Now, this is not in that realm at this moment in time because the parties that are reporting this deal are very reputable, very reliable, very, very good sources. Okay, the kind of people that when they speak, when they come out and talk about players moving, about transfers happening, they're the people you need to listen to. I was listening to Mark Goldbridge the other day, and he was talking about, obviously, here we go. That's what they call it on the what he calls it, here we go. And Fabrizio Romano being the king of here we go, and he certainly is that. So it was tweeted out very much earlier that yesterday evening that Turkish side Trabzonspor have sent a formal proposal to Rangers for James Tavernier. So that was the initial story, that there was this formal offer on the table from Trabzon to Rangers for captain James Tavernier. So there was a bid in place. Okay, that was the first thing. So Romano has got this information. He shared this information. Now, that was then backed up with this information that came out later on in the evening that said Tavernier has agreed a contract. Trabzonspor have reached an agreement with James Tavernier for a 2-year contract with an option for a further year. So this gives Tavernier a possibility of 3 further years playing football. I think after that, he probably may look to hang up his boots. That make him 34, 35 probably by the time that contract comes to an end. So, look, that's a good deal for James. That is a really good deal for James. And no doubt the wages will be somewhere around what he is getting paid now at Rangers, about £30,000 a week. Now, the only hold-up at this moment in time in getting this contract and getting this deal done is the fact that Rangers and Trabzon are currently €1 million, which is about, £500,000 to £800,000 apart in their valuations of James Tavernier. However, both parties remain in negotiations. Now, there's been no exact report as to what is a fee that has been offered by Trabzon, and there is no fee that is known to be demanded by Rangers. That is just doesn't happen. The only time you ever hear managers talk about fees for players is when they're being a bit stupid and they are a bit, kind of like he's not for sale. Like, for example, Clement did with Butland. It's 45 to 50 million for Butland. Realistically, you're not going to get that, but that's kind of leave him alone, not for sale. Don't even think about it. So it appears that there is an agreement in place between the player, his agent, and the club. It is now just about agreeing that transfer fee. Now, €1 million is probably, in footballing terms, is not that much. But like I said, we don't know what valuation has been placed on the player. We've heard, multiple different valuations across time. We've heard, the Saudis offering, say, £7 million for Goldson and Tavernier. That was a rumor that went around in January. We've heard £4 or £5 million for Tavernier. There was lots of different bids. Now, I've been through Rangers social media to last night, and look, I'll be honest with you, social media is never a good place, is it? There's an awful lot of rubbish on social media. There's an awful lot of trolling. There's an awful lot of toxicity, and there's an awful lot of idiots who are complete keyboard warriors who just want to make a name for themselves. I've read wild stuff, like, for example, nothing south of 15 million for Tav, which is just absolutely unrealistic. It's just not at all realistic. You are not going to get £15 million for a player who is the wrong side of 30. It's just completely and wholly unrealistic. He's not an international. It's not going to happen. People saying 8, 9, 10 million. Again, I think that is wholly unrealistic for a player the wrong side of 30. I think realistically, anything between £3 and £5 million would be a decent fee for Tavernier. £5 million obviously being the operative. If he could get £5 million, due to the numbers, if he gets his numbers, that could possibly boost that to £5 million, or it could be £4 million with add-ons. Something around that fee could be what Rangers are looking for. I certainly think that would be more than reasonable. I don't realistically think you're going to get any more than that. Like I said, he is the wrong side of 30. No matter what his numbers say, and no matter what he has achieved personally with Rangers, it doesn't really bode for a 12, 15 million transfer fee. That is just wholly unrealistic. And I don't think you're going to get that from any club. Even the Saudis, I think, would balk at paying 15 million for Tavernier. The positive, of course, that could come from this is if Trabzon refused to budge on that £1 million either way, or that €1 million, 800,000, 500,000 pounds, whatever it is in rough translation. It could be that Saudi clubs who are interested could see this as an opportunity to come in and to gazump Trabzon. Besiktas, if they're still interested, that was not lazy journalism, could come in and gazump Trabzon. Now, look, speaking personally, I hope this move goes through. I just think that if we can get this move over the line, if we can get in, say, £4 or £5 million, this could be the kind of straw that breaks the dam, that finally opens the floodgates to allow some of these players, these big names and these big wages off our books, and gives Rangers the financial freedom and the financial space to go out and actually bring in new experienced players. I mean, you've had the rumours over Adama Traore been signed, but no money there to buy him, which I don't wholly believe at this moment in time. I don't think there's any truth in that. But I think this could be the beginning of the real change at this club. And I think if you want a real, Clement talked about wanting a reset. He talked about wanting a complete reset. Now, if you want a reset, you've got to kind of cut out the old and bring in new. And I think, the issue you've got there is Tav and Goldson and so on are very much still associated with the past, with all the past regimes, the Gerrard, the Van Bronckhorst, the Michael Beale regime. And I think if you want a complete fresh start, you do need to kind of take out those players who've been here for a very long time and have been so conditioned to what is the norm, it seems, in Scottish football at this moment in time, that we are Borussia Dortmund to Celtic's Bayern Munich, and we need to take that away and restart, reset, refresh, revolutionize, and move this squad forward. So for me, it's a good deal. It's time to move him on. I understand fans who don't want to see him go. I've read comments that I've been criticised for saying he wants to go. I've seen fans saying that it's a mistake. The people who want him to go are idiots. I just don't see it personally. His lack of defensive skills, his lapses in defence are not going to get any better as this season goes on. He's not going to get any quicker. And like I said, he is the wrong side of 30. So if we can get a fee for him now before his contract runs out, then that for me is good business on behalf of the club. Now, in terms of the transfer window, and people have asked about the transfer window, is open now, as we know, but it will close on the 30th of August at 11 p.m. UK time in England and 11:30 p.m. in Scotland. So we have half an hour more than the English to buy and sell players. So there's still a decent amount of time left in this window, 43 days left. So there's still a long way to go in this transfer window. But this is, I think, for me, the Tav deal could be the opening of that floodgates. Now, there's still reports going around about Connor Goldson being linked with Birmingham City. Those reports are refusing to go away. I live near Birmingham, and obviously have some friends who are Birmingham fans, see some of the local newspapers. And it is still something that is being reported down here, and something that is being rumoured that Birmingham are looking for an experienced defender. They're looking for someone to come in and anchor their promotion bid back to the Championship, and they see Connor Goldson as maybe been that man. A lot, again, depends on whether a mutually agreeable fee can be determined between Rangers and Birmingham, and obviously whether the player and the club can come to an agreement. But it does appear to be that there are clubs out there now looking at these players and seeing these players as perhaps options for them going forward. So for me, if we can get Goldson gone as well, that again would be a massive move forward for the club, and I think would free up funds and wages to allow us to go and buy players who can come in and really improve this squad. There are substantially a lot of areas that need to be improved, and this is more than a one window job. I think we identified 7 players that we need on the live pod the other day, talking about the squad strength. But realistically, you're not going to get 7 players across the line in this window. I do not think 7 more players. I just don't think it is doable, both from a financial and a logistical point of view. Now, the other story that has obviously been going around at this moment in time is as regards Todd Cantwell. Now, I think we all know that there is an issue between the manager and Todd Cantwell, that the manager, I think, is very unamused with. Whilst I suppose whilst he obviously clearly admires Todd and his ability and his skills and what he can bring to the team when he is on form and when he is producing, I think there's still an element of showmanship, that character, that social media presence that the manager doesn't like, and the hot-headedness at times. Now, the issue I think you've got with Cantwell is if you take the hot-headedness out of Cantwell, I think you spoil the player. For me, that is the type of player that he is. He is a hot-headed player. He is a player that wants to be on the edge, wants to really push it, wants to really cause a little bit of bother here and there. That's who he is. But there's a lot of talk. There's an awful lot of talk, and I'm reading increasingly more talk, in and around sources at the club that the manager is prepared to shift Cantwell on, and he's looking for somewhere to sell him to. Now, at the moment, there is no reports as to any clubs interested in Cantwell, which, you can kind of understand at the moment, because, it seems to me at the moment that whenever he's in the media, it's because he's done something on social media or he's caused some controversy. So, a lot of clubs will look at that and think, nah, don't want to touch that. Now, I love Todd Cantwell. I think he's a top player, and I think he could have a really big future at Rangers if he settles down and plays football and plays it to a consistent level, a level we've seen him play at times. His passing, his dribbling, his ability is very good, and he's arguably technically one of the best players we've got in this squad. But like I said, for me, it needs to be a consistent production. It needs to be a consistent, consistent way of developing and a consistent way of producing, including in big games. And that's what we need to see from Cantwell. Now, can Clement get that out of him? Can he bring all his man management and coaching skills to bear? Now, we heard, didn't we, whilst they were away in the Netherlands, he'd had sit-down one-to-one meetings and talked about the relationship and talked about the expectations from both sides, and said that it had been a two-way conversation, not just him sitting there and telling the players, which is very interesting. And I'm sure Todd, being the kind of character that he is, would have had his say. But this seems like, to me, there is a real determination from within the club now, from the football board, maybe from Koppen, from Clement, to kind of get this moving now. That's where the drive is coming from Koppen, from Clement, to push this on so that they can go out and start looking at the players. I think Niels Koppen obviously doesn't want to feel that all the scouting work that he's done, and all this work going all over the globe, talking to players, talking to agents, watching games, watching players, is all for nothing. And I think that is kind of the drive is coming very much from them to get this transfer market moving. Well, guys, let me know what you think of the stories we've covered in today's video. Obviously, please help us to get towards our target of 6,000 subs. We're very close to 5,900 at time of recording, so please obviously help us get there. And we keep pushing on, obviously, to 6K. Target of 10K by the 31st of December as well. Thank you for watching Glasgow Rangers Nation, guys. As always, on the way out, two things I ask of you. Number one, smash the like. And number two, remember always, we are the people.